Have you ever had that moment where you look out your window and realize someone is literally stealing your land right in front of your eyes? Well, that's exactly what happened to me last spring, and let me tell you, it turned into the craziest property battle I've ever experienced. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell, because this story of neighborhood warfare gets wild and you won't want to miss how it ends. I'm Mark Anderson, and for the past 7 years, I've lived in what I thought was a peaceful corner of Pine Grove Estates. My house sits on a beautiful half-acre lot that I purchased after years of saving. My piece of the American dream, complete with a spacious backyard where I'd always planned to build a garden sanctuary. The property came with detailed surveys, clear boundaries, and what I thought were good neighbors. Boy, was I wrong about that last part. It was early March 2024, and I was enjoying my morning coffee on my back deck, planning out where I'd plant my vegetable garden that spring. The morning sun was just perfect, birds were chirping, and the cool breeze carried the scent of blooming cherry blossoms from my prized trees. These quiet moments were why I'd bought this place, a perfect slice of suburban tranquility. I remember checking my weather app, excited about the upcoming warm weekend, when I could finally start preparing the soil. That's when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of heavy machinery coming from next door. Now, construction noise wasn't unusual in our growing neighborhood, but this seemed closer than normal, much closer. My new neighbor, Steve Parker, had moved in just 3 months ago. We'd exchanged the usual neighborly pleasantries, a wave here, a good morning there, but nothing beyond that. He seemed nice enough, though I'd noticed he had a habit of making improvements to his property without much planning or consideration. For others, already he'd installed bright security lights that blazed into my bedroom window, which he adjusted after I asked, and built a shed that looked suspiciously close to the property line. But what I saw when I walked to the edge of my deck that morning made my coffee cup freeze halfway to my mouth. There, in what was clearly my backyard, was a massive excavator, its yellow arm extended over my property line, digging up my planned garden space. Around it, workers were placing marking stakes and spray painting lines on the ground, lines that cut at least 15 feet into what I knew was my land. I set down my coffee and walked toward the nearest worker, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable. "Excuse me," I called out. "I think there might be a mistake here. This is my property you're digging up." The worker looked up, shrugged, and pointed towards Steve's house. "Talk to the homeowner, sir. We're just following the plans he gave us." That's when Steve emerged from his back door, wearing designer sunglasses and carrying blueprints. He walked over with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. "Morning, Mark!" he called out cheerfully, as if he wasn't in the process of stealing part of my yard. "Exciting day, finally getting started on my pool project. It's going to be amazing. Natural rock features, infinity edge, the works. Really going to boost all our property values." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay professional. "Steve, I think there's been a mistake. Your pool plans, they're extending into my property. I have the surveys from when I bought the place. This land is definitely mine." Steve's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in his posture. "Actually, Mark, I had my own survey done last week. According to my documentation, the property line extends to where we're building. But hey, don't worry about it. Like I said, the pool will increase your property value too." I felt my face getting hot. "I need you to stop work immediately. We need to sort this out before—" "Look, Mark," Steve interrupted, his voice taking on a condescending tone. "I've already got all the permits. The plans are approved. Maybe your surveys are outdated, but this is happening. Why don't you just trust that I've done my homework here?" As I watched the excavator take another bite out of my yard, I realized this wasn't going to be resolved with a friendly chat. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos and videos of everything. The machinery, the markers, the workers, and especially the original property markers that were about to be destroyed by Steve's pool project. "I'm calling my lawyer," I said firmly. Steve's smile finally faltered, just for a second, before returning with a hint of steel behind it. "Do what you need to do, Mark. But this pool is getting built, and if you try to interfere, you'll be hearing from my lawyers." As I walked back to my house to make some urgent phone calls, I heard the excavator resume its work. Little did Steve know he'd just picked a fight with the wrong neighbor. I wasn't about to let him steal my land, no matter how expensive his lawyers were. The moment I stepped back into my house, I called Jennifer Martinez, a property lawyer, who'd been recommended by a colleague. While waiting for her to answer, I watched through my window as more construction equipment arrived at Steve's property. My hands were shaking with anger, but I forced myself to document everything, taking photos and videos of the original property markers before they could be destroyed. Jennifer picked up on the third ring, and I quickly explained the situation. Her response was immediate and reassuring. "Don't engage with him anymore. I'm sending a surveyor right now. Forward me all your property documents, and I'll file an emergency stop work order within the hour." I spent the next hour scanning and emailing every document I had, the original property survey from my purchase, tax records, deed, everything. As I was finishing up, I heard a knock at my front door. It was Kevin Wright, the surveyor Jennifer had sent over. He was a seasoned professional with 30 years of experience, and his face grew increasingly concerned as he reviewed my documentation. "Something's not right here," Kevin muttered, comparing my survey to the fresh marking stakes. "These new markers, they don't match any official county records I've seen." He pulled out his professional equipment and began taking measurements, meticulously documenting every discrepancy. What Kevin discovered next made my blood boil. The new survey stakes didn't just encroach on my property, they had been deliberately placed to create a false boundary line. But here's where it got interesting. Kevin noticed something odd about the official-looking survey document Steve had filed with his pool permit application. "This survey," Kevin said, pointing to a stamp on the document, "it's dated last week, but the surveyor whose stamp appears on it retired 3 years ago. I know because he was my mentor." He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Yeah, John? It's Kevin. Quick question. Have you done any surveys in Pine Grove Estates recently, specifically for a pool installation?" Kevin's face darkened as he listened to the response. "That's what I thought. Thanks." He turned to me. "The stamp is forged. Someone used this retired surveyor's credentials to create a fake property survey." I felt a mix of rage and vindication. "So Steve submitted fraudulent documents to get his pool approved." "It gets worse," Kevin said, showing me his tablet. "I just pulled up the county records. The original property lines are exactly where you said they were. But someone filed an amendment last week, rushed through the system with expedited processing. The filing fee was paid in cash, and the confirmation email goes to an address I've seen before, belonging to Fast Track Permits LLC. My heart sank as I recognized that name. Fast Track Permits was a local company known for pushing through construction permits quickly, often skirting regulations. Their advertisements were all over local construction sites, promising guaranteed approval for building projects. I immediately called Jennifer back and shared what we'd found. Her response was immediate. "This is no longer just a property dispute. This is fraud. I'm calling the county permit office and the police. Don't confront Steve, but keep documenting everything." As if on cue, I heard Steve's voice outside. Through my window, I could see him talking to the construction foreman, gesturing animatedly at my property. I grabbed my phone and started recording just as Steve noticed Kevin taking measurements. "Hey!" Steve shouted, storming over to my property line. "What do you think you're doing?" Kevin remained professional. Official survey verification, sir. We've found some concerning discrepancies in the property boundaries. Steve's face reddened. I have all the necessary permits. You have no right to interfere with my construction project. Actually, Kevin replied calmly, as a licensed surveyor, I have both the right and obligation to report fraudulent property documentation. Would you care to explain why you're using a retired surveyor's stamp on your permit application? The change in Steve's demeanor was instant. His confident swagger vanished, replaced by barely controlled panic. He pulled out his phone and walked away rapidly, speaking in hushed tones. Within minutes, a sleek black SUV pulled up to Steve's house. A man in an expensive suit emerged, clearly a lawyer. They huddled in Steve's driveway, occasionally glancing our way. I continued recording everything while Kevin completed his measurements. Just then, Jennifer arrived with a police officer in tow. Officer Frank Miller took one look at Kevin's evidence and immediately ordered all construction work to stop.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
The workers began packing up their equipment, looking annoyed but not surprised, as if this wasn't the first time they'd been caught in the middle of a permit dispute. Steve and his lawyer approached our group, but Jennifer stepped forward first. Mr. Parker, I'm Jennifer Martinez, Mr. Anderson's attorney. We've uncovered evidence of permit fraud, including a forged surveyor's stamp and falsified property documents. The police are here to document these findings, and I've already contacted the county permit office to revoke your construction approval. Steve's lawyer tried to interject, but Jennifer wasn't finished. Additionally, we have evidence linking these fraudulent documents to Fast Track Permits LLC. I'm sure the county prosecutor will be very interested in that connection. The color drained from Steve's face. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, and Steve's arrogant demeanor crumbled completely. Look, he said, his voice notably less confident. Maybe we can work something out. The pool plans can be modified. This isn't about the pool anymore, Jennifer replied firmly. This is about fraudulent documents being submitted to county offices, forged professional credentials, and attempted property theft. Officer Miller, I believe we're ready to file a formal complaint. As the police officer began taking statements, I noticed movement at other houses along our street. Neighbors had gathered to watch the drama unfold, many of them recording on their phones. One of them, Mary Phillips from 2 doors down, approached me with an interesting revelation. You're not the first one, she said quietly. Last year, Steve tried something similar in his old neighborhood. He was on the local news for construction permit irregularities, but somehow the story got buried. I recognized him when he moved in and tried to warn the homeowners association, but nobody listened. This information was a game changer. If Steve had a history of fraudulent property schemes, this wasn't just a simple boundary dispute anymore. It was a pattern of deliberate fraud. As Officer Miller finished taking statements, he approached me with some paperwork. We'll need you to come down to the station to file a formal complaint. The county prosecutor's office will want to review all of this, especially given the connection to fast-track permits. They've been trying to build a case against them for months. I looked back at my yard, where the excavator had left ugly gouges in my carefully maintained lawn. The garden I'd planned would have to wait, but at least we'd caught Steve's scheme before he could steal my property. As I watched him huddled with his lawyer by his garage, I couldn't help but wonder how many other homeowners he'd tried to scam before picking the wrong target. The next morning, I sat in the county prosecutor's office, surrounded by stacks of documents. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah Collins, spread out the evidence across her desk. My original property surveys, Steve's fraudulent documents, and a thick file labeled Fast Track Permits LLC created a paper trail of deception that was impossible to ignore. Mr. Anderson, Sarah began, adjusting her glasses, your case might Be exactly what we needed. We've been investigating fast-track permits for months, but proving their involvement in permit fraud has been challenging. They're careful, using different methods each time, but this... She held up the forged surveyor's stamp. This is concrete evidence. As Sarah explained, fast-track permits had been operating in 3 different counties, helping property owners push through unauthorized construction projects. They had a sophisticated system, using retired professionals' credentials, manipulating property records, and exploiting gaps in the permit approval process. But they'd never been caught with such clear evidence of forgery before. While we were discussing the case, Jennifer Martinez burst into the office, her face flushed with excitement. "You're not going to believe what I just found," she announced, placing her laptop on the desk. "I've been digging into Steve Parker's history, and it's worse than we thought. He's not just a homeowner working with fast-track permits, he's one of their silent partners." Sarah Collins leaned forward, suddenly more interested. "Can you prove that?" Jennifer pulled up a series of corporate documents. Steve Parker is listed as a managing member of 3 different LLCs, all sharing an address with fast-track permits subsidiary companies. He's been involved in at least 7 other property disputes in the last 3 years, all following the same pattern: move into a neighborhood, file fraudulent permits, encroach on neighboring properties, then either force a below-market buyout or flip the property with illegal improvements. My stomach churned as I realized the full scope of what we'd uncovered. This wasn't just about my backyard anymore. It was about exposing a systematic fraud operation that had been preying on homeowners across multiple counties. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Mary Phillips, my neighbor. "You need to get back here now. Something's happening at Steve's house." I excused myself and rushed back to my neighborhood, Jennifer following close behind in her car. What we found when we arrived made my jaw drop. A team of workers was back at Steve's house, but this time they weren't digging for a pool. They were hastily filling in the excavation, clearly trying to erase all evidence of their work. I immediately started recording video while Jennifer called Officer Miller. Within minutes, police cars arrived, lights flashing. The workers scattered, leaving their equipment behind. Steve emerged from his house, this time with 2 lawyers flanking him. "This is private property!" one of the lawyers shouted. "You have no right to interfere with my client's landscaping work." Officer Miller wasn't impressed. "Landscaping? You mean destroying evidence in an active fraud investigation?" He turned to his deputies. "Secure the site. Nobody touches anything until we get crime scene units here." As if the situation wasn't tense enough, a news van pulled up. Emily Chen, a reporter from the local station, approached with a cameraman in tow. "Mr. Anderson, we received an anonymous tip about fraudulent construction permits and property theft in this neighborhood. Would you care to comment?" Before I could respond, Jennifer stepped in. "My client has uncovered evidence of a systematic fraud operation involving Fast Track Permits LLC and multiple properties across 3 counties. We're working with the prosecutor's office on an ongoing investigation." Steve's lawyers tried to hustle him back into his house, but Emily was faster. "Mr. Parker, is it true that you're a silent partner in Fast Track Permits? Can you comment on the other property disputes you've been involved in?" Steve's face contorted with rage. "This is harassment. I'm being set up." He turned to me, pointing accusingly. "Anderson is just trying to extort money from me. He's the one who's lying about property lines." That's when Kevin Wright, the surveyor, stepped forward with his tablet. "Actually, I have satellite imagery showing the original property markers from 6 months ago, before Mr. Parker moved in. Would you like to see exactly where the true boundary lies?" The news camera swung to capture Kevin's evidence as he methodically demonstrated how the property lines had been falsified, Steve's lawyers whispered urgently to him, but he shoved them away and stormed toward me. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," he snarled, getting uncomfortably close. "I've handled bigger problems than you before." Officer Miller immediately stepped between us. "Mr. Parker, that sounded an awful lot like a threat. Would you care to rephrase that?" While this confrontation was unfolding, more neighbors had gathered to watch. Susan Taylor, who lived across the street, approached Officer Miller with her phone out. "I have security camera footage from last night," she said. "It shows people removing the original property markers after midnight." The evidence was mounting by the minute. Sarah Collins arrived from the prosecutor's office, taking in the scene with grim satisfaction. "Mr. Parker," she announced, "we have enough to issue a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud, forgery of official documents, and conspiracy to commit property theft. Would you like to surrender yourself now, or should we make this more difficult?" Steve's lawyers huddled around him, speaking in urgent whispers. The color had drained from his face as he realized his scheme was unraveling in front of news cameras. Finally, he turned to Sarah Collins. "I want to make a deal." Sarah smiled coldly. "Oh, we're way past that point, Mr. Parker. But if you're ready to tell us everything about fast-track permits operations, we might consider it when making sentencing recommendations." As the police led Steve away in handcuffs, Emily Chen turned to me for a final comment. "Mr. Anderson, how did you know to investigate the permits so thoroughly?" I thought about it for a moment. I just knew something wasn't right. When someone tries to steal your property in broad daylight using fake documents and intimidation tactics, you have two choices: back down or fight back. I chose to fight back. The story was far from over, but watching Steve being placed in the back of a police car, I felt a small sense of satisfaction. My garden might be delayed, but at least justice was being served. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a much larger investigation that would uncover a web of corruption, extending far beyond our quiet neighborhood. In the days following Steve's arrest, my quiet suburban life transformed into a whirlwind of legal meetings and revelations. The local news coverage had sparked something unexpected. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from other homeowners across the state who'd experienced similar scams. Jennifer Martinez had to set up a special hotline just to handle all the incoming tips about fast-track permits operations. The morning started with another meeting at the prosecutor's office, but this time the room was packed. Sarah Collins had called in federal investigators as the scope of the fraud had crossed state lines. Agent Derek Thompson, a stern-faced FBI investigator, spread out a massive chart across the conference table. "What we're looking at here is just the tip of the iceberg," Agent Thompson explained, pointing to various connections on the chart. Fast-track permits isn't just falsifying property lines and permits. They're part of a larger real estate fraud ring operating in 5 states. Steve Parker? He's their local operator, but he answers to bigger fish. The chart showed a complex web of shell companies, all connected to a central organization called Sovereign Development Holdings. Property records, bank transfers, and permit applications created a pattern of systematic fraud that made my backyard dispute look tiny in comparison. "Here's where it gets interesting," Sarah Collins added, pulling up a series of emails on her laptop. "Remember those expedited permits? They required sign-off from someone in the county office. We've identified a clerk who's been pushing these applications through for a price." Jennifer leaned forward, studying the emails. "Robert Chase, the senior permit clerk?" "The same," Sarah confirmed. "He's been with the county for 15 years, has access to all the historical property records, and coincidentally purchased a vacation home in the Bahamas last year. Care to guess where the money came from?" As they discussed the expanding investigation, my phone buzzed with a text from Greg Taylor, another neighbor. "Turn on Channel 7 now." I pulled up the local news live stream on my phone, and the room fell silent. Emily Chen was standing outside the county courthouse, breaking a major story. Sources confirm that several county employees have been taken into custody this morning in connection with a widespread property fraud scheme. Among those arrested is Robert Chase, a senior permit clerk who allegedly accepted bribes to fast-track fraudulent construction permits. The news continued, but Agent Thompson was already on his phone. "We need to move now. If they're reporting arrests, other suspects might try to flee." As if to confirm his concerns, Sarah's phone rang. It was Officer Miller. "We've got movement at Steve Parker's house. His wife is loading boxes into an SUV." I rushed back to my neighborhood with Jennifer, arriving just as Mrs. Parker was attempting to leave. Officer Miller's patrol car blocked her driveway, and several officers were already removing boxes from her vehicle. "Those are personal items," Mrs. Parker protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Officer Miller pulled out a warrant. "Ma'am, we have reason to believe these boxes contain documents relevant to an ongoing fraud investigation. Step away from the vehicle." As the officers began cataloging the contents, Jennifer nudged me. "Look who just showed up." A black luxury sedan had parked down the street, and a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit was watching the scene through tinted windows. Agent Thompson appeared beside us, speaking quietly into his radio. "Target vehicle identified. Marcus Wellington, CEO of Sovereign Development Holdings, is on site." The significance wasn't lost on me. The big boss had come to town, probably to clean up Steve's mess. But the FBI was ready. Within minutes, unmarked vehicles converged on the sedan. Wellington barely had time to look surprised before agents surrounded his car. Inside Mrs. Parker's boxes, the officers found exactly what they were looking for: hard drives, documents, and most importantly, a ledger detailing every fraudulent permit, every bribe, and every property scam fast-track permits had run in the area. "Mrs. Parker," Sarah Collins announced, holding up the ledger, "I suggest you call your lawyer, and then I suggest you consider following your husband's example and cooperating with our investigation." The scene attracted more neighbors, and among them, I spotted Mary Phillips talking to Emily Chen. The news reporter's eyes widened at whatever Mary was telling her, and she quickly waved her cameraman over. That evening's news broadcast revealed why. Mary had been keeping a detailed record of suspicious activities in the neighborhood ever since she recognized Steve from his previous schemes. Her security cameras had captured numerous late-night meetings between Steve and various officials, including Robert Chase, all documented with dates and times. "I knew something wasn't right," Mary explained on camera. "When Mr. Anderson stood up to them, I realized it was time to share what I knew." The evidence mounted quickly. Wellington's arrest opened up new avenues of investigation. His phone contained emails and messages linking Sovereign Development Holdings to dozens of fraudulent property schemes across multiple states. The company had been systematically targeting growing neighborhoods, using local operators like Steve to manipulate property lines and force homeowners into unfair deals. Jennifer called an emergency meeting with all the affected homeowners in the county courthouse's main conference room. The space was packed with families, each with their own story of property disputes and fraudulent permits. Thanks to Mr. Anderson's refusal to back down and the subsequent investigation, Jennifer announced to the crowd, we've uncovered evidence that will help every one of you reclaim your properties and seek damages. The federal investigation is ongoing, but Sovereign Development Holdings assets have been frozen, and they won't be stealing anyone else's land. As I looked around the room at all the families who'd been victimized by this scheme, I felt a mix of anger and relief. My Simple property dispute had uncovered a criminal enterprise that had been operating unchecked for years. Steve's attempt to steal my backyard for a pool had backfired spectacularly, exposing corruption that went all the way to the county offices and beyond. Agent Thompson approached me after the meeting. You know, most people would have just given. In fighting back against a neighbor usually isn't worth the hassle. But because you stood your ground and documented everything, we were able to break open a case we've been building for years. The irony wasn't lost on me. All I'd wanted was to protect my property and plant my garden. Instead, I'd helped expose a multi-state fraud operation and brought down a criminal enterprise that had been preying on homeowners for years. As I drove home that evening, past Steve's house where FBI agents were still carrying out boxes of evidence, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the biggest victories come from the smallest stands. The morning after Wellington's arrest, I woke up to find my mailbox stuffed with letters from various law firms representing Sovereign Development Holdings. Each letter contained the same message, phrased in increasingly threatening legal language: drop the case or face consequences. They offered settlements ranging from generous to astronomical, but Jennifer Martinez saw right through it. They're getting desperate, she said, spreading the letters across her office desk. These aren't just settlement offers. They're trying to buy your silence before more evidence comes to light. She held up one particular letter, her expression grim. This one's signed by Richard Bennett, their top litigation attorney. He doesn't handle small cases. As if to underscore the point, my phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tried to access my bank accounts overnight. Then another alert, suspicious activity on my credit cards. A third message warned of attempts to change my utilities providers. Financial harassment, Agent Thompson explained when I called him. Classic intimidation tactic. They're trying to disrupt your life, make you feel vulnerable. He paused, typing something. We've seen this before with Sovereign's cases. They go after people's credit scores, utility services, even their jobs. True to his warning, I received a call from my employer an hour later. Someone had sent them an anonymous letter claiming I was under investigation for fraud. Thankfully, my boss knew about the real investigation and dismissed it immediately, but the message was clear. Sovereign had resources and they weren't afraid to use them. The pressure didn't stop there. Strange cars began parking outside my house at night. My internet service became mysteriously unreliable. Deliveries I never ordered started showing up codey, while important mail went missing. Each incident seemed minor in isolation, but together they formed a pattern of coordinated harassment. Jennifer advised me to document everything, and I did. Security cameras caught people photographing my house at odd hours. My dash cam recorded vehicles following me to work. Even my phone started acting strangely, showing signs of potential surveillance. They're trying to wear you down, Sarah Collins explained during an emergency meeting. Make you feel like settling is easier than fighting. She slid a document across her desk. But what they don't know is that every attempt at intimidation gives us more evidence of criminal conspiracy. The FBI set up surveillance of their own, watching the watchers. They caught 3 private investigators hired by Sovereign, each with direct links to previous cases of witness intimidation. Agent Thompson's team traced the financial harassment to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, adding money laundering to the growing list of charges. One morning, I found Emily Chen waiting at my front door. Mr. Anderson, we've received some interesting information about Sovereign Development Holdings, she said, holding up a thumb drive. A whistleblower came forward, someone from inside their organization. The drive contained emails, memos, and internal documents detailing Sovereign's problem resolution strategies. They had an entire department dedicated to pressuring uncooperative property owners, with tactics ranging from financial disruption to personal smear campaigns. But their biggest mistake came when they tried to pressure Mary Phillips into retracting her security camera evidence. Two men in suits visited her house, claiming to represent a real estate investment firm. They offered her twice her home's value to sell and sign a non-disclosure agreement. Mary, however, had learned from my experience. Her security system recorded the entire conversation, including the moment they revealed their connection to Sovereign. Better yet, she'd recognized one of them. He'd worked with Steve Parker on previous property schemes. The FBI moved fast. Within hours, both men were in custody, and their arrests led to a breakthrough. One of them, facing serious charges, decided to cooperate. James Wilson, a former property acquisition specialist for Sovereign, laid out the entire operation. It wasn't just about stealing property, he explained in his recorded statement. The real money came from the manipulation of property values. They'd force people out, combine lots illegally, then flip them to shell companies at inflated prices. The properties were used as collateral for loans, which funded more acquisitions. It was a massive pyramid scheme built on stolen land. His testimony revealed something else, a list of corrupt officials in multiple jurisdictions who had helped facilitate the schemes. Judges, permit officers, bank officials, even law enforcement personnel had been on Sovereign's payroll. The investigation expanded rapidly. Search warrants were executed across 5 states. More whistleblowers came forward, encouraged by the mounting evidence. Each new revelation confirmed that my backyard dispute had cracked open something much bigger than anyone anticipated. One afternoon, while meeting with Jennifer to review new evidence, I received an unexpected visitor. Lisa Foster, Steve Parker's wife, was waiting in the lobby of Jennifer's office. "I can't be part of this anymore," she said, her hands shaking, as she pulled documents from her designer handbag. "Steve told me it was all legal, that everyone does it, but after they arrested Marcus Wellington..." She pushed the papers toward us. "These are the real records, the ones they kept separate from the official books." The documents proved to be a goldmine. Detailed spreadsheets showed every property they'd targeted, every official they'd bribed, every homeowner they'd pressured into selling. More importantly, they revealed the true scope of Sovereign's operation: over $500 million in fraudulent property transactions across 12 states. Sarah Collins called an emergency press conference. As cameras rolled, she laid out the expanding investigation. What began as one homeowner's stand against property theft has exposed one of the largest real estate fraud schemes in state history. We've uncovered evidence of systematic corruption, witness intimidation, and financial crimes that reach the highest levels of local government. That evening, as I watched the news coverage from my living room, Agent Thompson called with an update. "Wellington's talking," he said. "The pressure from the evidence was too much. He's naming names, including some very powerful people who helped facilitate this scheme." The intimidation attempts stopped as suddenly as they'd begun. The suspicious vehicles disappeared from my street. My financial accounts stabilized. Even my internet service returned to normal. But I knew better than to think it was over. "They're regrouping," Jennifer warned. "People with this much money and influence don't give up easily. They'll try something else, probably something bigger and more sophisticated." She was right, but now we were ready. Every homeowner in the neighborhood had installed security cameras. We had a network of people watching for suspicious activity. Most importantly, we had evidence, mountains of it, and it was all safely backed up in multiple locations. The investigation had grown far beyond my property line dispute, but in a way, that small stand had been the key to everything. By refusing to back down, by documenting every detail, by connecting with other victims, we'd exposed a criminal enterprise that had operated unchecked for years. As I finally began work on my garden, carefully replanting the areas damaged by Steve's illegal excavation, I couldn't help but reflect on how differently things might have turned out if I'd simply given in to the pressure. Sometimes, standing your ground isn't just about protecting your property. It's about exposing the truth, no matter how deep it goes. The morning sun cast long shadows across my backyard as I sipped coffee on my deck, watching FBI agents methodically scan the ground with metal detectors. They were searching for the original property markers that Steve's crew had removed, but they found something else entirely. A small electronic device buried near my property line. "Signal repeater," Agent Thompson explained, bagging the device. "Professional grade, military spec. This isn't something you pick up at your local electronics store." He checked a handheld detector. "There are at least 3 more of these around your property." I felt a chill despite the warm morning. "What exactly do these things do?" "They're used for surveillance," he replied, marking locations on a tablet. "Someone was monitoring every movement on your property, probably for weeks before Steve even started his pool project. This was planned, carefully and professionally." Jennifer Martinez arrived as the agents were unearthing the 4th device. She carried a thick manila envelope and wore an expression that suggested big news. "We need to talk privately," she said, glancing at the house. Inside my kitchen, she spread out a series of photographs across the counter. They showed Marcus Wellington, the arrested CEO of Sovereign Development Holdings, at various political fundraisers and private meetings. But it was the other people in the photos that caught my attention. "That's Senator Harrison," I said, pointing to one image, "and Judge Reynolds. Wait, isn't he overseeing some of the property dispute cases?" Jennifer nodded grimly. "These photos came from Lisa Foster's personal cloud storage. She's been very cooperative since coming forward. Look at the dates. These meetings happened right before key zoning laws were changed, making it easier for companies like Sovereign to manipulate property records." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about stolen property anymore. We were looking at political corruption at the state level. Sovereign hadn't just been bribing local officials. They'd been influencing legislation to facilitate their schemes. A sharp knock at the door interrupted our discussion. Sarah Collins entered, accompanied by a woman I didn't recognize. "This is Diana Maxwell from the State Ethics Commission," Sarah introduced. "She's been conducting a parallel investigation into campaign contributions linked to real estate development." Diana wasted no time. "We've traced over $5 million in donations from Sovereign's shell companies to various political action committees. The money was then distributed to key officials who helped push through zoning changes beneficial to their operation." As if on cue, my TV started broadcasting breaking news. Emily Chen was standing outside the state capitol, looking more serious than usual. "Sources confirm that federal agents are currently executing search warrants at multiple legislative offices. While no official statements have been made, these actions appear connected to the expanding investigation into real estate fraud and political corruption." The broadcast cut to footage of agents escorting people from government buildings. Among them, I recognized faces from Jennifer's photographs, officials who had posed with Wellington at those private fundraisers. My phone buzzed with a text from Mary Phillips. "Check your email now." I opened my inbox to find a forwarded message chain. Mary had been doing some digging of her own, connecting with neighborhood watch groups across the state. They'd compiled a database of suspicious property disputes, all following patterns similar to what had happened in our neighborhood. "The pattern goes back years," Diana explained, examining the data. "They'd target growing communities, manipulate zoning laws through their political connections, then use local operators like Steve Parker to execute their schemes. When homeowners fought back, they'd leverage their influence to make the problems disappear." Agent Thompson's radio crackled with activity. More arrests were happening across the city, judges recusing themselves from cases, officials suddenly announcing early retirements. The whole corrupt system was unraveling. "Mr. Anderson," Diana said, studying me carefully, "you should know. There's intense pressure to bury this investigation. Sovereign's influence runs deep, and a lot of powerful people stand to lose everything if this continues." "Which is exactly why it needs to continue," Sarah Collins interjected. "We've never had evidence this concrete before. They've always managed to hide behind layers of shell companies and corrupt officials, but this time..." She gestured to the surveillance devices the FBI had uncovered. This time they got sloppy. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the window, we could see a group of reporters gathering at the end of my driveway. Word had gotten out about the surveillance devices, and the media wanted answers. Jennifer pulled out her phone, showing me a notification. "They've just announced an emergency legislative session. Apparently, several state representatives want to push through a bill that would limit investigations into real estate fraud. They're trying to change the rules before more evidence comes out." "Too late," Agent Thompson smiled, holding up one of the signal repeaters. "These devices, they're registered to a security firm that exclusively contracts with government agencies. Someone used state resources to conduct illegal surveillance on private citizens. That opens up a whole new federal investigation." Sarah Collins was already on the phone with her superiors. "We need to move fast. If they're calling an emergency session, they're desperate. That means we might have leverage over some of the smaller players." The next few hours were a blur of activity. More FBI agents arrived, setting up a mobile command center in my driveway. Diana Maxwell coordinated with ethics investigators, connecting dots between campaign contributions and suspicious property deals. Jennifer worked with other attorneys representing homeowners across the state, building a massive class action lawsuit. As evening approached, Emily Chen requested another interview. This time, she had documents showing how Sovereign Development Holdings had manipulated property values across entire neighborhoods, using their political influence to change zoning laws at will. "The public needs to understand," Emily explained. "Setting up for the interview, this isn't just about one company or a few corrupt officials. This is about a systematic attempt to undermine property rights for profit. Your story just happened to be the thread that started unraveling the whole thing." Looking at my torn-up backyard, now crawling with federal agents and crime scene technicians, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. All this started because I wanted to protect my property line from a neighbor's pool project. Now we were exposing corruption at the highest levels of state government. Agent Thompson approached with a serious expression. "We've just received word. Senator Harrison is calling a press conference. Word is he's planning to reveal names, dates, and dollar amounts. The whole house of cards is about to come down." Oh! As the sun set over my neighborhood, I watched more news vans arrive, their satellite dishes reaching into the darkening sky like mechanical trees. Tomorrow would bring more revelations, more arrests, more evidence of how deep this corruption really went. But for now, I simply stood in my backyard, remembering how this all started with a simple property dispute and a neighbor who picked the wrong person to mess with. Dawn broke over Pine Grove Estates to reveal a neighborhood transformed. News vans lined the streets, satellite trucks crowded the cul-de-sac, and a makeshift press area had sprouted on my front lawn. But it wasn't the media circus that caught my attention. It was the steady stream of cars pulling into Steve Parker's driveway. "Moving company," Agent Thompson explained, watching through binoculars from his surveillance position. "But look at their badges." He handed me the binoculars, and I noticed each worker wore a federal evidence collection tag. They're cataloging everything before his wife relocates. Standard procedure when we're dealing with asset forfeiture. Lisa Foster emerged from the house, looking nothing like the polished socialite who'd first moved into our neighborhood. She carried a small box of personal items, escorted by federal agents. Our eyes met briefly across the yards, and she paused. "I'm sorry," she called out, her voice carrying across the morning air. "We never meant for it to go this far." Before I could respond, her new lawyer hurried her into a waiting car. Jennifer Martinez arrived with fresh court documents and a troubled expression. "We've got a problem," she said, leading me inside. "Someone leaked your personal information online last night. Banking details, social security number, everything." I felt my stomach drop. "How bad?" "Bad enough that we need to take precautions," she replied, spreading papers across my kitchen counter. "But here's the interesting part. The leak traces back to a server in Judge Reynolds' office. They're getting sloppy, making mistakes. They think they can intimidate us by exposing your information, but all they've done is give us more evidence." Sarah Collins called while we were discussing security measures. "Turn on Channel 7, she said without preamble. "Senator Harrison's press conference is starting." The senator looked haggard as he approached the podium, his usual confidence replaced by barely contained panic. "In light of recent allegations," he began, his voice shaking, "I feel compelled to set the record straight about my involvement with Sovereign Development Holdings." What followed was extraordinary. For nearly an hour, Senator Harrison detailed a complex web of corruption that stretched back decades. He named judges, officials, and business leaders who had participated in the scheme. He revealed how zoning laws had been manipulated, how properties had been stolen through fraudulent documents, and how millions in bribes had been disguised as legitimate campaign contributions. "My office just received this," Jennifer said, holding up her tablet. Harrison's testimony triggered a domino effect. 3 more state representatives are asking for immunity deals. They're ready to talk about everything: the fake permits, the forged documents, even the surveillance operation on your property. A knock at my door interrupted us. Emily Chen stood on my porch with her camera crew, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood at least a dozen people, all holding documents. "These are homeowners from across the state," Emily explained. "They all have stories similar to yours. Properties threatened, fake permits, fraudulent surveys. They've been fighting this battle alone until now. Would you be willing to hear their stories?" For the next several hours, my living room became a makeshift conference room. People shared their experiences, passed around documents, and discovered patterns they hadn't noticed before. One man had lost his family farm to a fraudulent rezoning scheme. An elderly couple had been forced out of their retirement home through manipulated property lines. A young family had their dream house stolen through forged deed transfers. "Look at these dates," Jennifer said, spreading the documents across my dining room table. Every major property theft coincided with a campaign contribution to a specific official. They weren't just stealing land, they were buying the power to do it legally. Agent Thompson burst in with breaking news. "We just arrested Judge Reynolds. Found him trying to delete files from his office computer. But here's the kicker. He had a safe in his chambers. Inside was a list of every property deal Sovereign had manipulated in his jurisdiction, complete with payoff amounts." The evidence was damning. Judge Reynolds had been accepting bribes to fast-track property transfers, dismiss homeowner complaints, and approve fraudulent permits. His list included my address, with a notation: "Priority acquisition, Phase 3 development, plan." "They weren't just after your backyard," Sarah Collins explained, examining the documents. "Your entire neighborhood was slated for redevelopment. Steve's pool project was just the first step. They were planning to force everyone out eventually." As if to confirm this, Mary Phillips arrived with a shocking discovery. She'd found architectural plans hidden in a false bottom of a filing cabinet in Steve's garage. The drawings showed a massive luxury condominium complex where our homes currently stood. "The surveillance devices make more sense now," Agent Thompson noted. They were monitoring the whole neighborhood, gathering intel on everyone. Your property. Dispute just forced their hand before they were ready. The revelation sparked a new wave of media interest. Local news teams began interviewing neighbors, uncovering more stories of suspicious property disputes and harassment. The FBI expanded their search, finding surveillance devices planted throughout the neighborhood. By evening, the story had gone national. Major news networks picked up on the political corruption angle, running special reports on how sovereign development holdings had manipulated property laws across multiple states. My phone buzzed constantly with interview requests and messages from other homeowners fighting similar battles. "Mr. Anderson," a reporter called out as I stepped onto my porch. "How does it feel to have exposed one of the largest real estate fraud schemes in state history?" Before I could answer, Jennifer intervened. My client didn't set out to expose corruption. He simply stood up for his property rights. The fact that this revealed such widespread fraud shows how badly our system needed scrutiny. Later that same night, as the media crews finally packed up and the neighborhood grew quiet, I sat on my back deck looking at Steve's now empty house. The half-dug pool stood as a monument to greed and corruption, but it had led to something important, a community coming together to fight back against powerful interests that thought they could steal our homes with impunity. Sarah Collins joined me, holding a thick file. "Tomorrow's going to be interesting," she said. "We're executing search warrants on 3 more judges and a dozen other officials. This is going to reshape property law enforcement in this state." Looking at my torn-up yard in the gathering darkness, I realized something profound had changed. What started as a simple property line dispute had evolved into something much more significant, a movement to protect homeowners' rights and expose corruption at every level. Agent Thompson's words from earlier echoed in my mind. Sometimes the biggest crimes are exposed by the smallest stands. He was right. By refusing to back down over a few feet of property line, we'd uncovered a criminal enterprise that had been stealing homes and manipulating laws for years. The upcoming days would bring more revelations, more arrests, and more challenges. But for now, watching the last news van drive away, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Sometimes standing your ground isn't just about protecting your property. It's about protecting everyone's right to feel secure in their homes. A sharp knock at my door at midnight changed everything again. Agent Thompson stood on my porch with 2 federal marshals, their expressions grave. "Pack a bag," he said without preamble. "We need to move you to a secure location." The urgency in his voice left no room for questions. As I threw essential items into a duffel bag, he explained the situation. The FBI's cybercrime unit had intercepted communications between sovereign development holdings and several offshore accounts. The transactions weren't just about money laundering, they were hiring professionals, dangerous ones. "These aren't local thugs," Agent Thompson explained as we drove through the darkness. "We're talking about international fixers who specialize in making problems disappear. They've got someone coming in from Eastern Europe." Jennifer Martinez met us at a nondescript hotel on the outskirts of town. She carried a laptop and a stack of documents that made my heart sink. "They found something in Judge Reynolds' encrypted files," she said, spreading papers across the hotel desk. Sovereign wasn't just buying properties. They were setting up a massive international money laundering operation. Your neighborhood was meant to be their crown jewel. The architectural plans Mary Phillips had discovered were just the tip of the iceberg. The proposed luxury condos weren't meant for normal residents. They were designed as front companies for washing illegal funds from across the globe. Every unit would be sold at inflated prices to shell companies, creating a paper trail of legitimate transactions for dirty money. Sarah Collins arrived with more disturbing news. "We've got a problem at the state level," she announced, pacing the hotel room. Someone's trying to push through emergency legislation that would invalidate our investigation. They're claiming it's about protecting property rights, but the fine print would effectively legalize everything Sovereign did. My phone buzzed. A message from Mary Phillips. She'd captured something unusual on her security cameras. Two men in expensive suits had been photographing houses in the neighborhood, paying particular attention to the properties of anyone involved in the investigation. Professional surveyors, Agent Thompson said, examining the photos, but look at their equipment. He zoomed in on one image. That's military-grade mapping technology. They're not measuring property lines. They're mapping escape routes and security vulnerabilities. Emily Chen called next, her voice urgent. "You need to see this," she said, sending a video link. It showed Marcus Wellington, the arrested CEO, being led into court for a hearing. But what caught everyone's attention was the man in the background, a well-known international real estate developer with ties to organized crime. Victor Petrov, Diana Maxwell explained, joining us via secure video call. He's been on our radar for years. His companies build luxury developments across Europe and Asia, but intelligence agencies believe they're all fronts for money laundering. Now we know why he's interested in your case. Jennifer pulled up financial records on her laptop. Sovereign's property schemes weren't random. They were targeting specific neighborhoods in a pattern. Each location they chose was perfect for their real purpose, creating a network of properties that could move money across borders without detection. The scale of the operation was staggering. The fake pool project that had started this whole investigation was meant to be just one small part of a global criminal enterprise. By standing up to Steve Parker, I'd accidentally threatened an international money laundering operation worth billions. A secure phone in the room rang. Sarah Collins answered it on speaker. "We've got movement," a voice reported. "Petrov's. People are accessing sealed court documents through a compromised clerk's account. They're trying to identify everyone involved in the investigation." Agent Thompson immediately began making calls, setting up protection for key witnesses. Mary Phillips and other neighbors who'd provided evidence were quickly moved to secure locations. The FBI established a visible presence in the neighborhood, making it clear that any intimidation attempts would be met with federal response. Diana Maxwell shared more troubling information. Petrov's organization doesn't just build properties, they specialize in making opposition disappear. They've done this in other countries. Once they identify everyone involved in exposing their operations, they start applying pressure. Financial attacks, personal harassment, whatever it takes to silence people. As if to prove her point, my email inbox suddenly flooded with messages. Someone had subscribed me to thousands of mailing lists, making it impossible to find legitimate communications. My social media accounts reported login attempts from multiple countries. Even my credit cards showed suspicious transaction attempts. Digital harassment, Agent Thompson explained. It's just the beginning. They're testing our defenses, seeing how we react. The real pressure will come soon. Jennifer was already preparing legal countermoves. "We need to go public with everything," she argued. "The more exposure this gets, the harder it will be for them to operate in the shadows." Sarah Collins agreed. "I've got reporters from major networks ready to break the international angle. Once people understand this isn't just about local property fraud, that it's about global criminal organizations trying to take over American neighborhoods, public pressure will make it harder for corrupt officials to help them." Emily Chen arrived at the hotel with more evidence. Someone had leaked her internal documents from Sovereign's offshore accounts. The papers revealed a complex network of shell companies, all leading back to Petrov's organization. Each luxury development project they'd planned was designed to look legitimate while serving as a conduit for illegal funds. "Look at these numbers," Jennifer said, examining the financial records. They weren't just planning to build condos in your neighborhood. The entire development was pre-sold to shell companies at 10 times market value. It was never meant for real residents, just a way to make dirty money look clean. Agent Thompson's phone buzzed with an urgent update. The FBI had intercepted communications between Petrov's organization and several local officials who hadn't yet been arrested. They were planning to destroy evidence before federal agents could secure it. "We need to move now," he said, already heading for the door. "If we lose those documents, we lose our chance to expose the whole operation." As federal agents raced to secure evidence across the city, I sat in the hotel room watching news coverage of the expanding investigation. What had started with a neighbor's attempt to steal part of my backyard had exposed an international criminal conspiracy. The simple act of standing up for my property rights had threatened their entire operation, and now they were fighting back with everything they had. Sarah Collins returned with a determined expression. They thought they could silence this investigation through intimidation and political pressure, but they made a crucial mistake. They picked a fight with American homeowners who weren't, afraid to stand up for their rights. Now the whole world is watching, and there's nowhere left for them to hide. Looking out the hotel window at the city lights, I realized this fight had become about something much bigger than property lines. It was about standing up to powerful interests who thought they could steal our homes and communities with impunity. The coming days would bring more challenges, but we were ready. Sometimes the biggest battles start with the smallest stands. The secure hotel room felt like a prison by morning. Through bulletproof windows, I watched federal agents patrolling the perimeter while Agent Thompson briefed his team. That's when my encrypted phone lit up with an unexpected message from Lisa Foster. "Turn on the financial news now." CNBC was running breaking coverage of a major market disruption. International regulators had frozen billions in assets connected to Viktor Petrov's development companies. Stock markets across Asia and Europe were reacting to the sudden scrutiny of luxury real estate developments that had been used for money laundering. Jennifer Martinez burst into the room, clutching court documents. "You're not going to believe this," she said, spreading papers across the desk. "Steve Parker just filed a motion to testify. He's not just talking about local corruption anymore. He's naming names in Petrov's organization." Sarah Collins arrived moments later with a federal protection detail. Steve's testimony changed everything. He was more than just a local operator. He was Petrov's test case for infiltrating American suburbs. If the scheme worked here, they planned to replicate it nationwide. Agent Thompson's phone rang with urgent news. The FBI had raided several prestigious law firms simultaneously across the country. They discovered encrypted servers containing decades of documentation about Sovereign's true operations. These weren't just property lawyers, Thompson explained, reviewing the findings. They were running a sophisticated operation to identify vulnerable neighborhoods, corrupt local officials, and create legal frameworks for international money laundering. Diana Maxwell joined us via secure video link, her face tense. "We've uncovered something bigger than real estate fraud. These developments were part of a larger strategy to gain control of key properties near sensitive government installations. They weren't just laundering money, they were gathering intelligence. The revelation sparked immediate action. Military intelligence officers arrived at the hotel, bringing satellite imagery showing patterns of property acquisitions near military bases, research facilities, and critical infrastructure. "Your neighborhood wasn't chosen randomly," a stern-faced intelligence officer explained. "Pine Grove Estates sits at a crucial junction of fiber optic networks. By controlling properties in the area, they could tap into secure communications." Emily Chen called with another breakthrough. Her team had discovered connections between Petrov's organizations and several major technology companies. The luxury developments weren't just for money laundering. They were meant to house sophisticated surveillance equipment. The pool Steve wanted to build, Agent Thompson said, pulling up blueprints. The design included underwater access panels for data collection hardware. They were planning to tap into underground communication lines while maintaining a perfect suburban facade. Mary Phillips sent encrypted photos from her new safe location. She'd been reviewing her security footage and noticed something strange. The surveyors who'd been photographing houses were carrying devices that matched known foreign intelligence collection equipment. Jennifer was already preparing legal documents. This changes the whole case. We're not just filing civil suits anymore. We're looking at violations of national security laws. The property theft was just their cover story. A knock at the door brought more unexpected news. A senior executive from one of the world's largest banks had come forward as a whistleblower. She'd uncovered patterns of suspicious transactions linking Petrov's developments to foreign intelligence services. The money laundering wasn't their primary goal, Sarah Collins explained, reviewing the banker's testimony. It was just how they funded their real operation, creating a network of properties perfect for surveillance and data collection. Agent Thompson's team intercepted new communications between Petrov's organization and their local operatives. They were scrambling to contain the damage, but the exposure of their true purposes had thrown them into chaos. They never expected a simple property dispute to unravel everything, Thompson said. Their whole operation relied on appearing legitimate. Once people started asking questions about property lines and permits, the facade began cracking. Steve Parker's testimony proved crucial. From his holding cell, he provided detailed information about how the organization recruited local operators. They looked for people with real estate experience and financial troubles, promising them wealth and power in exchange for helping secure key properties. They taught us everything, Steve's testimony revealed. How to manipulate property records, which officials to bribe, how to pressure homeowners into selling, but they never told us the real purpose. We thought it was just about development profits. The investigation expanded rapidly. Intelligence agencies from multiple countries joined forces, tracking Petrov's network across continents. Properties that had seemed like simple luxury developments were revealed as sophisticated intelligence-gathering operations. Diana Maxwell coordinated with international regulators to freeze more assets. They're trying to liquidate everything, she reported, moving money through crypto exchanges, selling properties at massive losses. They know their cover is blown. Back in Pine Grove Estates, federal agents discovered more surveillance equipment hidden in seemingly innocent structures. The half-dug pool in Steve's yard contained sophisticated wiring meant to connect to underground data lines. Each property they acquired was another piece of their surveillance network, Agent Thompson explained. By controlling key locations, they could monitor everything from internet traffic to government communications. Lisa Foster provided another crucial piece of evidence, a private server containing encrypted communications between sovereign development holdings and their foreign handlers. The messages revealed a years-long operation to establish surveillance posts disguised as luxury developments across the country. Your refusal to sell your property didn't just inconvenience them, Jennifer said, reviewing the decrypted messages. You threatened an intelligence operation years in the making. That's why they responded so aggressively. Sarah Collins called an emergency meeting with federal prosecutors. The case had evolved far beyond property fraud. It now involved national security, international espionage, and a complex web of financial crimes. As evening approached, Agent Thompson received word that Petrov had been arrested while trying to flee to a non-extradition country. The international net was closing, and the organization was falling apart. Looking out at the city lights from my secure hotel room, I reflected on how a simple property line dispute had exposed an international conspiracy. By standing up for my rights as a homeowner, I'd accidentally uncovered something much darker. A sophisticated operation to infiltrate American communities for surveillance and intelligence gathering. Sometimes the biggest secrets hide in plain sight, Agent Thompson mused, watching patrol cars circle the hotel. They thought nobody would question luxury developments in quiet suburbs. They never expected a homeowner's stubborn stand to bring down their whole operation. Dawn broke over the city as emergency sirens pierced the morning calm. From my hotel window, I watched a convoy of federal vehicles race past, their lights flashing against the glass towers. Agent Thompson burst into the room, already geared up in tactical vest. "Petrov talked," he announced, checking his secure phone. His organization didn't just want to monitor communications, they were planning to control them. The luxury developments were meant to create a shadow network across major US cities. Jennifer Martinez arrived moments later with a stack of newly unsealed court documents. The evidence was staggering. Each property in their network had been strategically chosen to create a web of surveillance points, all disguised as upscale, residential developments. "Your neighborhood wasn't their only target," she explained, spreading maps across the table. They had similar operations in 12 major metropolitan areas. Each location provided access to crucial infrastructure: fiber optic lines, power grids, emergency response systems. Sarah Collins connected via secure video, her face grave. "We've got a new problem. Someone inside the federal government was helping them. High-level clearance, access to classified infrastructure maps. They knew exactly which properties to target." The investigation had uncovered a complex web of corruption reaching into agencies responsible for protecting critical infrastructure. Petrov's organization hadn't just bought local officials. They'd compromised people with access to sensitive national security information. Emily Chen called with breaking news. Her team had discovered documents linking sovereign development holdings to a series of shell companies specializing in advanced surveillance technology. The pool designs weren't just for show. They contained sophisticated monitoring equipment, disguised as routine maintenance systems. "Look at these blueprints," Agent Thompson said, pulling up technical drawings. Every luxury development they planned included hidden server rooms, specialized wiring, and concealed antenna arrays. They were building a private intelligence network right under our noses. Mary Phillips sent an encrypted message from her safe location. Her security cameras had captured something crucial. The surveyors who'd been monitoring our neighborhood were using equipment that matched known foreign intelligence gathering devices. Diana Maxwell coordinated with international authorities as more evidence emerged. "We're finding similar operations in other countries," she reported. "Luxury developments near government facilities, all connected to Petrov's network." This wasn't just about America. It was a global intelligence gathering operation. A knock at the door revealed an unexpected visitor. A former engineer from one of Petrov's development projects. He'd come forward with detailed technical specifications of their surveillance systems. The pools were just the beginning, he explained, sketching diagrams. Each property had underground chambers for servers and signal processing equipment. They could monitor everything: phone calls, internet traffic, even emergency response communications. Jennifer was already preparing new legal filings. "This goes beyond property fraud and money laundering," she said. "We're looking at espionage, threats to national security, and an international conspiracy to compromise critical infrastructure." Agent Thompson's phone buzzed with urgent intelligence. The FBI had intercepted communications suggesting Petrov's organization was attempting one last operation, a coordinated data grab before their network was completely exposed. "They're trying to activate all their monitoring systems simultaneously," he explained. "If they succeed, they could capture massive amounts of sensitive data before we shut them down." Sarah Collins mobilized federal resources across multiple jurisdictions. Teams of agents moved to secure properties identified as part of the surveillance network. Local law enforcement established perimeters, while cybersecurity experts worked to prevent the mass data collection attempt. Back in Pine Grove Estates, specialists discovered more evidence of the planned surveillance operation. The half-finished pool in Steve's yard wasn't just hiding monitoring equipment. It contained a sophisticated command and control center meant to coordinate data collection across the entire region. Lisa Foster provided crucial intelligence from her secured location. She'd found encrypted files detailing the full scope of the operation, code names, contact protocols, and lists of compromised officials in key positions. They recruited people who could help them navigate American real estate law, she explained via secure video, but that was just their cover. The real operation was about creating a private intelligence network disguised as luxury housing developments. Emily Chen's investigation uncovered more connections. The architectural firm that designed the developments had links to foreign intelligence services. Every building plan included hidden spaces for surveillance equipment, carefully concealed behind high-end amenities. The swimming pools were their signature, Agent Thompson explained, reviewing technical documents. Underground equipment rooms disguised as pool maintenance areas, water features hiding antenna arrays, landscaping designed to conceal data collection points. They turned suburban luxury into a sophisticated spying operation. Diana Maxwell reported success in freezing more assets connected to the scheme. They spent billions creating this network, she said. Every property was part of a larger system designed to gather and transmit sensitive information. Steve Parker's testimony proved invaluable. From federal custody, he provided details about how the organization identified properties crucial to their surveillance plans. They didn't just want valuable real estate. They needed specific locations that could access key communication nodes. "We thought we were just helping them acquire prime development sites," his statement revealed. "None of us knew we were part of an intelligence gathering operation. They compartmentalized everything, made it look like normal luxury development." The investigation expanded to include military intelligence as more evidence emerged about the true purpose of Petrov's network. The developments weren't just collecting civilian data, they were positioned to monitor sensitive government communications. "Your refusal to sell your property didn't just disrupt their local plans," Jennifer explained, reviewing classified briefings. "You accidentally exposed a massive intelligence gathering operation years in the making. That's why they fought so hard to silence you." Sarah Collins coordinated with federal prosecutors as the case evolved beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a property line dispute had uncovered an international conspiracy to create a private surveillance network across major American cities. Looking out at the city skyline, I watched federal agents securing another luxury development, identified as part of Petrov's network. The sophisticated operation hidden behind elegant facades and sparkling pools was finally being exposed. They never expected a homeowner's stubborn stand to bring down their entire operation, Agent Thompson mused, watching the raids unfold. They thought they could hide their surveillance network behind property disputes and zoning laws. Instead, one person's refusal to back down exposed everything. Midnight alarms blared through the secure hotel as emergency protocols activated. Agent Thompson rushed into my room, already issuing orders through his radio. "Petrov's people are making their final move. They've activated a hidden protocol in their surveillance network. Across the city, hidden systems beneath luxury developments hummed to life. Emergency response channels crackled with reports of suspicious activity at multiple locations. The organization was attempting one last massive data grab before their network was dismantled. Jennifer Martinez arrived with urgent news from the Federal courthouse. They're trying to destroy evidence through their legal channels. Law firms connected to sovereign development holdings are shredding documents and wiping servers. Sarah Collins coordinated with federal teams across multiple jurisdictions. We've got cyber units working to contain the data breach, but there's something else. We've identified a master control facility. It's hidden underneath one of their flagship developments downtown. Satellite imagery revealed an elaborate underground complex disguised as a luxury spa and wellness center. The facility housed servers and processing equipment capable of coordinating their entire surveillance network. That's their nerve center, Agent Thompson explained, studying tactical maps. Everything they've collected funnels through there. If we can secure it, we'll have concrete evidence of every operation they've run. Emily Chen's investigation had uncovered crucial details about the facility's security systems. They've got biometric locks, motion sensors, and armed guards. But there's a weakness. The entire system runs through their pool maintenance network. Mary Phillips sent encrypted blueprints from her safe location. Her analysis of construction permits revealed a pattern. Every luxury development in their network included specialized water features that concealed data transmission equipment. The pools weren't just for show, Diana Maxwell explained via secure video. They created a distributed network of cooling systems for their servers. Take down the master facility's pool system and their whole network goes offline. Lisa Foster provided critical intelligence from federal custody. The maintenance access codes change daily, but they follow a pattern. Steve used to handle the scheduling. It's based on astronomical data, tide tables and lunar phases. Agent Thompson's team quickly decoded the pattern. They had a narrow window to breach the facility before Petrov's organization could complete their data extraction and destroy crucial evidence. "We're going in tonight," Thompson announced, gearing up with his tactical team. "They'll expect us to hit the main entrance. Instead, we're going through their pool maintenance tunnels." Jennifer prepared emergency court orders as federal teams moved into position. "Once we breach the facility, we'll need immediate authority to seize everything. One judge's signature and their entire operation freezes." Sarah Collins coordinated with multiple agencies as the operation began. FBI cyber units stood ready to counter any digital deadman switches. Local authorities secured perimeters around every identified development in their network. The raid began at exactly 3:17 a.m. Agent Thompson's team accessed the underground facility through maintenance tunnels, while cyber units launched a coordinated attack on their security systems. "We're in," Thompson's voice crackled over secure channels. "You're not going to believe what we're seeing. Server rooms the size of football fields. They've been collecting data for years." Emergency alerts suddenly flashed across monitoring screens. The organization had triggered their fail-safe protocols. Every development in their network initiated emergency data purges simultaneously. "They're trying to wipe everything," Jennifer reported, watching real-time updates. "But they didn't count on us finding their backup servers." Diana Maxwell's international team had located mirror sites in multiple countries. As Petrov's organization attempted to destroy evidence in America, copies were being secured by authorities worldwide. Steve Parker, watching from federal custody, provided last-minute intelligence about hidden security measures. His insider knowledge helped tactical teams navigate the facility's complex defense systems. "The main control room is behind the spa's meditation chamber," his instructions detailed. "But watch for pressure plates under the marble tiles. One wrong step triggers flood protocols." Emily Chen's news team captured the operation from secure locations, documenting as federal agents emerged from the facility with servers and hard drives. The evidence they recovered would take years to fully analyze. "This isn't just surveillance data," Sarah Collins reported as preliminary findings emerged. They've got files on politicians, business leaders, military personnel, anyone who lived near their developments or accessed their facilities. The scope of their operation stunned even veteran investigators. Every luxury amenity in their developments had doubled as surveillance equipment. Spa treatments recorded conversations. Fitness centers tracked movements. Pool systems monitored electronic communications. They built a private intelligence network hidden in plain sight, Agent Thompson explained, securing evidence. High-end real estate was their perfect cover. Nobody questions why luxury developments need sophisticated security and maintenance systems. Mary Phillips coordinated with other homeowners as the full impact became clear. Entire neighborhoods had been unwittingly living under surveillance, their daily activities monitored and recorded by hidden systems. Lisa Foster's testimony revealed how the organization maintained their cover. They marketed everything as exclusive amenities: smart home features, automated systems, personalized environmental controls. It was all designed to hide their true purpose. The raid recovered more than just surveillance data. Hidden vaults contained evidence of bribery, blackmail, and corruption, reaching the highest levels of government and business. "This is going to shake things up," Jennifer said, reviewing preliminary findings. They weren't just gathering intelligence. They were building leverage over anyone who could threaten their operation. Sarah Collins prepared for immediate action as more evidence emerged. "We're looking at the largest espionage case in recent history." The property fraud was just their cover story. Agent Thompson's team continued securing the facility as dawn approached. Every room revealed new evidence of the organization's true scope and capabilities. "They really thought they could hide all this behind luxury real estate developments," Thompson remarked, watching evidence teams at work. "Your property dispute was the thread that unraveled everything." Looking at surveillance feeds from the raid, I realized how close they'd come to succeeding. If I hadn't stood up to Steve's attempt to steal my property, if I hadn't questioned their permits and documents, their operation might have remained hidden for years. Sometimes, the biggest conspiracies fall apart because of the smallest challenges, Jennifer observed. They planned for federal investigations and intelligence agencies. They never expected a homeowner's stubborn stand to expose everything. One month after the raid, I finally returned home to Pine Grove Estates. The neighborhood had transformed. Federal agents had finished their evidence collection, removing hidden surveillance equipment from every affected property. The half-dug pool in Steve's yard, once a symbol of property theft, now stood as a testament to one of the largest intelligence operations ever uncovered on American soil. Jennifer Martinez met me in my driveway, carrying final court documents. The federal case had concluded with unprecedented speed, given the national security implications. Sovereign Development Holdings assets were permanently frozen, their properties seized, and their entire network dismantled. "The settlements are being finalized," Jennifer explained, spreading papers across my kitchen counter. "Every affected homeowner will be compensated not just for property disputes, but for privacy violations. The federal government is converting the seized properties into affordable housing." Sarah Collins arrived with news from the prosecution team. The case had expanded beyond anyone's expectations. Over 300 people had been indicted, including corporate executives, government officials, and international operatives. Petrovs, facing life in federal prison, she reported. Steve Parker got 20 years, despite his cooperation. The judge made an example of them. Nobody threatens American property rights and national security simultaneously. Agent Thompson joined us, bringing satellite images showing the full scope of their dismantled network. We're still discovering hidden facilities. Every luxury development they built included sophisticated surveillance capabilities. They had coverage of major cities across the country. Emily Chen's final news report aired that evening, revealing the complete story to the public. The organization had spent decades building their network, using property fraud and development schemes to hide their true purpose. What began as a simple property line dispute, Emily's voice narrated over footage of the raids, exposed an international conspiracy that threatened national security. One homeowner's refusal to back down triggered the largest counterintelligence operation in recent history. Mary Phillips organized a neighborhood meeting to share the federal government's reconstruction plans. The seized properties would be renovated, surveillance equipment removed, and communities restored to their original purpose: actual homes for real families. Lisa Foster provided crucial testimony during the final hearings. Her detailed account of the organization's methods helped authorities identify and secure similar operations in other countries. They really thought they were untouchable, Diana Maxwell remarked, reviewing international seizure reports. High-end real estate was the perfect cover. Nobody suspects luxury developments of being intelligence-gathering operations. The evidence recovered from their master facility revealed the true scope of their ambitions. They hadn't just wanted to monitor communications, they were building a private intelligence network capable of rivaling government agencies. The technical sophistication was unprecedented, Agent Thompson explained, showing me secured sections of the facility. Every amenity doubled as surveillance equipment. Pool systems monitored data traffic, spa facilities recorded conversations, fitness centers tracked movements. They turned luxury living into a massive intelligence-gathering operation. Sarah Collins presented findings from the federal investigation. The organization had collected data on thousands of people, focusing on government employees, military personnel, and business leaders who lived near their developments. They weren't just gathering intelligence, she explained. They were building leverage. Every piece of personal information, every private conversation, every financial transaction, all stored and ready to use. Jennifer finalized paperwork returning full property rights to affected homeowners. The federal government established a special fund to repair damages and remove surveillance infrastructure from all seized properties. Your stand against their property theft didn't just save your backyard, Jennifer said. It protected countless Americans from living under constant surveillance. Sometimes the biggest victories start with the smallest refusals to back down. The neighborhood began healing. Where Steve's half-finished pool had marred my view, professional landscapers restored the natural terrain. Federal agents ensured every trace of surveillance equipment was removed, leaving our homes truly private once again. As I finally planted my garden in the restored backyard, Agent Thompson stopped by with one last update. We're still discovering the ripple effects of this case. Other countries are investigating similar luxury developments. Your property dispute might have exposed operations worldwide. Looking at my peaceful neighborhood, now free from hidden cameras and secret servers, I reflected on how differently things might have turned out. If I hadn't questioned that pool project, if I hadn't stood up to property theft, their operation might still be running. The biggest conspiracies often fall to the smallest challenges, Sarah Collins observed during her final visit. They prepared for federal investigations and intelligence agencies. They never expected a homeowner's stubborn defense of property rights to bring down their entire network. Emily Chen's investigation earned multiple awards, and her documentary about the case revealed how luxury real estate had become the perfect cover for international espionage. As the sun set over Pine Grove Estates, I sat in my garden, finally, enjoying the peace I'd originally sought when buying this home. The property line dispute that started everything had led to something much more significant: the protection of not just my property rights, but the privacy and security of countless others. Up next, you'll witness how another homeowner uncovered a shocking truth behind their neighbor's mysterious construction project and the incredible story of a family who discovered their dream home held an underground secret that would change their lives forever. Each of these tales reveals how ordinary people stumbled upon extraordinary secrets hidden in plain sight. Sometimes the biggest revelations come from the smallest moments of standing your ground.